I think I heard from everyone, so if we want, we can all turn off your cameras and mics,
Okay.
and Liz can make this live. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the fifth and final session of AWWA New Jersey's Beyond the Surface webinar series. We've got an amazing lineup of industry leaders for our panel today. We'll be talking all things collaboration. As always, you can use the Q&A feature to ask questions. That's at the bottom of your screen. And also feel free to use the React feature too. So throughout the series, we've actually had hundreds of viewers so far, so it's a little bittersweet that it's coming to a close. But we're so excited to end with today's topic, where we'll be discussing how embracing diversity is key to overcoming the barriers of collaboration we've discussed in the first 4 sessions, including generational divides in our multi-generational workforce, silos between different departments and areas of expertise, differing landscapes between utility sizes, community demographics and affordability, and racial and gender disparities. In planning today's session, our team asked the question, how can we collaborate and gain value from each other's differences? And this is really the overarching question for the entire series. And it's why we chose today's panelists, because they come to us from programs and organizations that embrace the idea that valuing diversity and committing to building relationships is fundamental to advancing collaboration. So I'm thrilled to have this panel on, but you've already heard enough talking from me already. So they'll actually be introducing themselves and their organizations. And we're going to do this through a lightning round. So each panelist is going to have a very strict 90 seconds. I'll have the timer up. I'll throw out the timeout if they hit that 90 seconds. But we're going to go through each of the panelists, and then we'll get to our discussion after that. So Paula, if you want to turn on your camera and your mic, we'll bring this up. I'll get my timer up. And I want to make sure that I got you spotlit here, okay? So thanks for coming on, Paula. Let me advance the slides here, and then we'll get going. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. When I began working at Jersey Waterworks 5.5 years ago, I was really glad to find many people dedicated to this work. My name is Paula Figueroa Vega, and I am the director of Jersey Waterworks. Jersey Waterworks is a collaborative that convenes different stakeholders around water infrastructure and stormwater management. In New Jersey, like many other states, we're dealing with aging infrastructures, combined sewer overflows, lead service lines, flooding, and more we're dealing with PFAS and emerging contaminants. And so Jersey Waterworks thought, how can we create a collaborative where all these individual efforts we can mobilize and imagine a more transformative action if we collaborate. Next slide. Jersey Waterworks focus on equity and community benefits. We understand that not every community have the same resources. So we want to make sure that overburdened communities have access to investments and solutions. And Jersey Waterworks members focus on solutions around local jobs, public health, and water affordability. Thank you for having me here.
All right, that was pretty close. You had 8 seconds left to hit that
Woo,
90.
that was
So,
tough.
all right, that first one is a big success. Thanks, Paula. All right, you can turn off your camera, your mic, and Pat, we will switch over to you. Let me just make sure that I have you pinned now. And let me restart my timer. Whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
All right. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pat Lindsay Harvey, and I'm president of the Blackwater Professional Alliance, BWPA. We are a national nonprofit that's committed to elevating Black professionals in every single corner of the water industry. You know, whether you're in the lab, in the field, or in the boardroom, BWA is here to ensure that Black excellence is visible, supported, and celebrated. And since we believe water is life and representation in water leadership is actually essential. So BWA is more than a network. It's actually a movement for equity, visibility, and community. Next slide, please. So we created BWA to really bring about change. We offer mentorship, leadership, development, and uh, to be an advocate to ensure Black professionals not only enter the water sector, but can shape it. We partner with utilities, schools, agencies to build pipelines of opportunity and create space where authenticity can connect people. Whether you're a colleague, an ally, or a future member, we invite you to be part of this journey because where Black water professionals rise, the entire industry flows stronger. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Pat. Great work. Again, very close on time, but you're good. We made it. I'm glad this is actually working out for everybody. All right, you can turn off your camera and your mic, and we will move on to Brenton.
Hi, everybody.
Wait, let me get you pinned. I want to make sure everybody can see you, okay?
Sure.
All right, go ahead.
All right. Hey, everybody. Brenton McCluskey here, Director of Strategic Development and Communications at the Water Center Penn. I lead some of our environmental and water initiatives, including our Water Leadership Collaborative, as well as some partnership building. But real quick, the Water Center at Penn is an applied research center. We're one of many centers on Penn's campus, but we are one of very few that work applied in the field. And we focus on everything drinking water, wastewater, stormwater, flood risk, climate resiliency. These are some of our program areas. We try to focus on water innovation and technology such as the new AI, water leadership, of course, always looking at community resilience and climate resilience. And of course, how do we influence policy? Next slide, please. So we built the Regional Network Collaborative for Water Leadership 3 years ago through support from Spring Point Partners. We really wanted to create something different that really focused on a diverse network of water professionals, not just water utility leaders, like many of my colleagues on this call. We're all trying to meet the same objective and really bring the water adjacent sectors to the table as well. Really build a collaborative space and a space to share resources and grow as a community. Thank you.
Thanks, Brenton. All right, you can turn off your camera and mic, and we will wrap up with Lauren. All right,
Okay.
you can, let me advance this. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lauren Stiefpak. I'm the project manager for the Transformative Water Leadership Academy with the American Water Works Association. The purpose of the TWLA, or the Academy, as many also call it, I see some shout outs, is to expand leadership opportunities for historically underrepresented groups at water utilities. And that can mean a variety of things, which I'll get into, but we also want to provide a community for professionals of all utility sizes to build their capacity to lead and to step into management roles and leadership roles to focus on the retention of the workforce at utilities. So we're looking for the program to enhance innovative solutions to community problems, expand the water professional leadership network, and really provide ways for participants to become stewards and champions of both their bodies of water that affect their utilities as well as DEI. And we see leadership really as a way of empowering others and not just a positionality. Next slide. And the program is relatively new. It's in its 3rd year, going into the 4th year, where we'll bring in 50 to 55 new leaders to really work on community change. And as I mentioned, we focus on ways for rising leaders to really connect with each other across regions, across race, ethnicity, gender. We don't just look for folks who are—
And we hit the time.
You did good. I thought I had
Oh
2 minutes.
man, you were close, but yeah, no, we hit it's okay. We have almost an hour now to get to discussion, so we will learn a lot about the TWLA. So thank you everybody for going through this. It's just kind of a fun, different way to get our introductions done. So if all of the panelists want to turn on your mics and your cameras, we'll get everybody up here. Liz behind the screen is going to spotlight all of us, and I am going to stop sharing my screen if I can in a moment. All right. All right, so we got everybody up here. So let's get to our questions. We heard a little bit about the programs that you are all running, but I'm curious as to what motivated the creation of them. So we'll start with what I believe is the youngest organization here, and that's Pat. I believe the Blackwater Professional Alliance is just slightly younger than the TWLA, but you can correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm not sure, but I'm glad to answer the question. What motivated us to start this organization was the fact that the water industry is diversity challenged. I mean, generationally challenged. And we just thought that it was going to be a great opportunity for us to, as Black people in the industry, to come together, network, discuss what issues and problems we're having, what solutions that we could come up with, and then get more Black people in the water industry.
Okay. And Lauren, you're, I guess, in reverse order. You would be the next youngest. So you want to talk about TWLA creation?
Yeah, I think similar to Pat, the water sector has historically been challenged racially and gender-wise, as well as for folks who are coming from different size utilities. And so the TWLA, the intention of the program is to build a community and network of folks from all different backgrounds, race, ethnicity, gender, as well as focusing on those professions that maybe aren't always seen as leaders in the community. So we're looking for those who are in customer service and accounting, and ways to expand and see folks from all different roles as leaders.
I think, Brian, that's something you also touched on with your leadership program, is kind of diversifying where those leaders are coming from, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think much like, Lauren and Pat and Paula have noted that, we were really looking to create a space because I think we find that there are lots of associations and different organizations for utility related professionals, or maybe just nonprofit related professionals, but they don't often interact with each other across the board. So we really wanted to create a space where we're bringing those groups together to really have a collaborative, space conversation to talk about challenges and to really be inclusive of folks who work in water but may not work at a utility, and really bring their voices into the mix.
And Paula, what do you want to chime in on the Jersey Waterworks Collaborative?
Definitely. So the collaborative has been around for about 11 years. And what kicked it off really was the permits that were being rolled out by the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection around combined sewer overflows in 2015 or so. And we were quite behind in the combined sewer overflows, sort of long-term control plans, and really thinking about how to modernize that system. And what the creators of Jersey Waterworks saw is that that was just one part of this vast system with many different players and many different challenges. And so what they decided to do was to create the collaborative where they could at least impact, and they imagined transforming a few shared goals together. And so that broke down silos. We know that combined sewer overflows are in older cities, usually urban cities, usually cities with environmental justice issues, and they're overburdened communities. And I think that really created the challenge that you could not work alone and without a diverse and really wide network of people to impact that particular challenge. It brought into, to larger scopes in terms of water infrastructure and stormwater management issues, because the state was dealing with many different issues. So I think that creating a space where different people can come together and think about solutions was really the primary goal for Jersey Waterworks.
Mm-hmm. And So this just popped into my head right now. Pat, Brenton, and Lauren, your programs all began within the past 3, 4 years or so. Is
Correct.
there any like common event, common driver? Because I mean, they all started right around the same time. So where did this all come from at the same time? I mean, it's all post-pandemic, right? I don't know if that played into it. If there's some other culminating event that kind of led into it, or is this just purely coincidence?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, BWA was started by four people that didn't even know each other. We all had a similar idea and we just kind of met and said, oh, then you need to meet so-and-so because they're doing this. And so it ended up being four of us that started this organization who didn't even know each other, out of a need that we saw.
Yeah. Yeah, I will just say that, one of the big catalysts, I think, for the Water Center and maybe for some of these programs has been supporters like Spring Point Partners, who now does not fund this types of programs, but they were very supportive over 5 years or so in the water space, and were able to get us all thinking about how to expand our programs, whether they were already existing or whether we needed to make them a little bit more robust or create new programs. So I think having a dedicated group of funders or funders in this space who are really supportive of programs like this is really important, and something unfortunately that we're lacking now. But we've started something great, and I think we are all continuing to really move these programs forward.
I think just to add on, I think it's showing the shift in mindset that is really needed in this space. And so this mindset of inclusion and just being able to say, there are others who maybe aren't feeling seen here. So how can we build spaces for them to come in?
So I want to continue that thought that Brandon, you brought up about, you mentioned Spring Point Partners was a funder for several of the programs that we're representing today, and they are no longer doing that work. So I'm hoping that each of you can just give us an idea of what the backbone of your organizations look like. How much of an impact is funding? How much of an impact is your workforce running these? But also a lot of these programs need volunteers too. So what does that volunteerism look like? Everything kind of coming together to keep these programs running, and do you see an impact on the long-term sustainability of your programs? Brian, I'll let you continue the thought that you started.
Yeah, I think, for the Water Center, we run these programs very lean and very efficient. There's unfortunately there's just not a lot of funding, and funding is very important. But I think we found ways to hold the line, so to speak, in terms of moving the program forward. We continue to look for outside support. I know some of us on the call have also put fundraising hats on, and we're actively looking, for partners such as alums for the University of Pennsylvania, for example. But yeah, it's hard when you lose such a dedicated support organization like Spring Point Partners in this space. But I think we're all resilient, and we're continuing to find ways to move forward. But it is difficult without, you have to have the resources. If we really want to make this work, I think it's important to have sustained resources, so that everybody feels that, they're able to grow into these programs and be supported.
Yeah, I'll say that, funding is extremely important. I mean, we also got funded by Spring Point Partners in the very beginning. And, trying to sustain that now that Spring Point Partners is not going to, do anything with water anymore. And so in January, we're rolling out our membership, membership dues to try to sustain us and look for other grant opportunities.
As for us, we have a very strong nonprofit organization called New Jersey Future. That is the backbone organization for Jersey Waterworks. But really, Jersey Waterworks doesn't belong to an entity. It really belongs to all the members. We do not charge for membership. We do not want to create that barrier. However, we do. This particular year has been very difficult. The Geraldine Dodge Foundation funded us for 10 years, and this year they have shifted their focus. They are funding a small portion of our work around water affordability. They're really focusing on the racial wealth gap. And so we've had to be really creative. We created this sustaining member circle where members that could contribute to Jersey Waterworks are able to do so. They're also sort of like sponsors to our annual conference. And we continue to look for grants and fundraise to keep the collaborative going. But it has been well supported by grants, and we do need sort of a shift in how we approach this work and how we continue it because we have 600 members, 3,000 in our network, and it's needed. It's very active. People are very engaged. It's not something that is dwindling down, even though the funding may be dwindling down. So, and the challenges continue.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think to add on to that, currently the TWLA is a federally funded grant program, and of course there were some scares this year about where will that come from and will that continue? And so that's part of what I've been working on in the program as well, just to ensure that there is sustainable funding for the long term to continue this program. So always a challenge, and looks like we can collaborate here.
And Laura, with that change, can you talk a little bit about maybe how DEI was integrated into the creation of the TWLA and any shifts that you've made recently?
Yeah, I think the during the origin and creation of the TWLA, there was a high intention on ensuring that there's racial and gender diversity in the program and how participants join the program, and that's still a big focus. And I think we also focus on ensuring that there are participants from small to very large utilities as well, as that diversity isn't always something that's visible. It's always a way to encourage folks from very small systems to participate in the program, to ensure that they're also gaining understanding of big ideas from large utilities, and vice versa. To that knowledge sharing is hugely important in a two-way street, for sure.
So if we're having really honest talk about DEI,
Let's
DEI
do it.
really never really benefit Black folks or many people of color in the first place. So you can't miss what you didn't have. So it really didn't have a place in thinking about, creating BWPA because it just didn't benefit us in any way.
Okay, so I want to keep going on that thought. So you're saying that DEI did not benefit the BWPA.
Really.
Do you find any values of DEI are incorporated into the Blackwater Professional Alliance now that you see value from?
I think the concept is valuable,
Mhm.
but it actually working, it didn't work. It just didn't benefit us in the way that it was supposed to.
Mhm. So where are you finding benefit now from the BWPA?
We're finding benefit in what we're in the work that we're doing. Bringing folks together, providing a place where a safe place where they can actually talk about what it is that they're experiencing. Offering suggestions on how to solve it. Because what we found is that Black people were leaving. The few of us that were in it, we're leaving the industry.
So every time we talk about DEI, and this is, look, let's be real. This whole webinar series has kind of been building to the direct questions around DEI. We went into it very soft, talking about very approachable subjects, and now we're tackling it head on. But I feel like, in the current landscape of today, it's just kind of this boogie monster of a word. So let's hone in on just the diversity aspect of it, and the diversity, not just in race and gender, but as you all have mentioned, in so many other categories. So I want to go to Brenton next and what UPenn is doing and the diversity of your program, how it played into the creation, and do you see value? Where is that value coming
Yeah.
from?
Yeah, I mean, definitely water challenges are definitely, disproportionately, affect, disadvantaged communities. And we really needed to elevate these voices to strengthen decision making and relevance. I think, for us, we really wanted to be intentional about when we think about diversity. Yes, it's just not people diverse, it is organization diverse. It is making the decision to bring a select group together to make sure that they are communicating with each other, that they have a seat at the table, that we're having challenging discussions. I think the University of Pennsylvania, the Water Centers program, it's not a traditional leadership program where you're coming in and you're going to come out with the best public speaking skills, or know how to best be the best supervisor in your group. It's more about learning how to hear what others are saying. And I think having those types of voices at the table and those types of organizations, and to have an open mind about what nonprofits and what utilities and what the federal and permitting agencies are talking about is really important. And so when we think of DEI, it's the whole bucket, and really creating that space, as Pat had said, that safe space to have these conversations. And that was really our motivation to do this, because we weren't seeing that happen in other areas. And I should mention that the regional art collaborative is just focused in the Delaware River watershed. We're not focused nationally. So we're very, greater Philadelphia area currently. So just having those types of organizations at the table is really important to us.
And Paul, you mentioned the reason for creating the Jersey Waterworks Collaborative and some of the racial disparities in the water industry for the communities we serve. Can you just touch a little bit more on the role that diversity played in the creation and the value you see now from the diversity throughout Jersey Waterworks, not just on the members, but also on the communities that you're impacting?
So early on, I learned that it was very intentional to have this group of people that were really dealing with the water challenges. So we had the environmental justice advocates along with regulators, people, organizations who would sue regulators at the same table. And I understand that that took a lot of time and effort to create that. And I think that's really important. I think Jersey Waterworks created these guardrails that allowed for people to sort of like put down some of their own barriers to communication to be able to kind of communicate. So, we are not a lobbying organization. We do not take a stand between private and public utilities. And this sort of collaborative consensus building works for Jersey Waterworks. And I think it's really valuable as a collaborative. But I do think that people like Pat, who is part of our steering committee, need to be there to kind of say what is really happening and how she sees these kinds of decision being made. And so what's important, if we don't create that table, that space, that platform where people are able to voice and push back some of the decisions that are being made or some of the way that things are being characterized, then we are not going to be able to have the kind of systemic change that we're really looking for. The collaborative space also is helpful because we try to aggregate sort of like a larger set of data and information so that we can impact impact a particular something. So for example, NRDC has aggregated the amount of shut-off notices in New Jersey, and found that Camden has a significant high number of shut-off notices. So like we're able to kind of look at that, and then we're able to work with partners on the ground and utilities on these issues. And I think that Jersey Waterworks as a platform allows this diversity of people and thoughts, and from different sectors to have a conversation and sort of like move forward. And some of the things I think that are happening behind walls, whether it's a relationship that's being built, people meeting because of the collaborative, or the information that's being shared, and then people are taking it back and sort of making a change where they need to make a change.
Thanks, Paula. And at this point, I'm going to ask Liz if you can put up the barriers to collaboration poll. And I want to ask our panelists a question about, I guess, either what barriers did you see when these programs started, and how your program has addressed them. I think, Paula, you just touched on that perfectly. Or kind of what barriers do you see in the future of the water industry? What are your programs doing to address them now? Or how do you envision these programs evolving to address new challenges? So we'll think about that question as we start to get some answers in here. I guess maybe Brenton, we'll start with you on this question as I get some answers rolling in.
Yeah, I think, well, I'll just take an example right now in the AI and water space. Risk aversion is something that we're seeing some challenges with, I think, in the water space. I think we need to be more innovative, right? We need to be thinking how we can move this sector forward in a way that is not business as usual. So I think that really plays into our leadership collaborative model, is having these types of conversations with the leaders around the table about, how can we be less risk averse, and really start thinking, differently and more innovatively, using types of technologies like AI and water. And what does that mean? I mean, a lot of it has to do with data issues and getting those uploaded in the smaller utilities that we're working with, and, adopting those types of technologies to help make things more efficient. So that's just one example. And I think that risk aversion in general, whether it's technology or policies, I think is a really important and challenging barrier for us as we move forward, and something we hope to address.
Pat, do you want to chime in next?
Sure. I think that the political climate that we're in now has caused a lot of barriers, and for people to be less collaborative. Sometimes it can be pretty volatile between people, and it seems like people are now staying in their own little silos and not collaborating. There's less collaboration going on now than I think ever before. The other barrier is the age barrier. You talk about older versus younger. You've got the older people who want to stay there and not let the younger people in, but the industry is aging, and this industry is not ready for what's about to happen. And we're going to have fewer and fewer people entering into the industry if we don't start reaching down and bringing those young people up.
I can add on to that. Thanks, Pat, for segueing. Something I was also thinking of saying too is just collaboration doesn't necessarily look just like community impact or across the sector, but thinking about within your department, within your utility, mid-career utility leaders, and that's the focus of the TWLA, have big ideas and not often heard. And so they're kind of in that space of maybe they're not ready to take into that leadership role or that management role yet, but have big ideas and want to be heard. And so I think, like Pat said, how can we lift others up? How can we consider interdepartmental collaboration and just listening to those who are future leaders of big ideas that they have, and how do we support them?
If I could just add one thing, it takes time and a lot of effort to collaborate. You
Mhm.
know, you have to engage and then re-engage and then re-engage again. And it's long term. It takes a lot of persistence, and it takes a lot of communication, and it takes time and effort. And so, collaboration, it's definitely the way to remove the kind of barriers that we see, but it takes time and effort, and we have to engage and re-engage. And when there's tension, we have to speak it out, fight it out, and then re-engage again.
Mhm.
And I think that just takes a lot of time and effort.
A lot of time and effort and a lot of inclusive spaces,
Mhm.
right? So this is a question I'm just thinking of now, like how are your programs building inclusive spaces to allow those diverse voices to be elevated? And I'll leave it up to anybody that wants to jump on that one.
I think when people feel that they're not being heard, when they feel that they're being locked out, when they feel that they're not valuable, I think that's one of the things that BWA does for our members. Because oftentimes at work, that's how they feel, but they don't have an outlet to be able to talk about it, to maybe voice that frustration. And so they come to, BWPA and voice those things. And oftentimes collectively, while we're building relationships with each other, we can offer those solutions so that they can get past those.
I think for the TWLA, really provides a space for leaders to be vulnerable. And so what challenges are they experiencing leadership management wise to come to the table with those challenges and talk it out and come up with solutions and ideas. But it allows a place for vulnerability to be okay for water leaders and to be embraced and to try something on, to practice and say, let's try this here so that when I go out to my utility or my community, I feel more confident in being able to take that next step into making that difference and to making change.
Yeah, I would agree with both Pat and Lauren, and I think, creating a space that people feel that they can lean on each other. I think in the background, coming together each month or however often our programs come together, that's important. But I think having that support network in the background, just seeing the emails that go back and forth between our leadership collaborative members and knowing that they're connecting with each other, I think that's really important. And having somebody else to lean on that's maybe in a different part of the water sector, I think is important, and to ask questions too. So creating that space for them to be able to connect in that way.
Ditto to everything everyone said. People need to feel a sense of belonging and that they're being heard and that they're being seen. And so, it takes a lot of us, not just the backbone staff, but each member to sort of reach out and make sure to kind of check in, especially if it's been a very difficult conversation or if we're sort of seeing each other, seeing like different parts of a solution. It takes this sort of like constant relationship building and cultivating that relationship so that people can feel like they belong. Because if they do not feel like their voices are heard or what they have to say matters, then they will disappear from the group and the collaborative.
So a couple of the categories that I'm getting back on the responses to that question of what are the barriers to collaboration our audience sees fall into a couple of buckets. And we have the buckets of the generational age experience or levels of leadership that you might see at a utility.
Mhm.
And then the other main bucket I would say is the local political, regulatory
Mhm.
environment from our public utility commissions or other organizational controls that we have. So how are your programs building leaders, building water industry members that can go back to their organizations and implement change to overcome some of these barriers? I know this is a curveball question for you all. I did not prep you for this one. It's kind of on the fly, so we'll see how fast everybody can think. I'm going to toss it up to whoever wants to tackle this one first.
I think that we have to come to this with a different mindset. You have to come to it with a we attitude and not a me attitude. There's no way for you to survive a me attitude. You just can't. If you have a we attitude, then everyone benefits. I think that's one of the first things you have to do. That is what's going to build, your community. That's what's going to build your utility. I think that's where you have to start.
Yeah, I want to give an example. This was from one of our cohort groups, and it was just in a discussion that came up. Somebody was talking about they were part of a regulatory agency and having to work with the community to discuss green infrastructure, I believe is what the topic was. And they had to, as part of the city council rules, they had to present options and they had to discuss, all parts of the implementation of the stormwater and green infrastructure components. And I think some others in the group that were in the nonprofit sector were viewing that as something that they just had to check the box on. And I think the nonprofit leaders that were in the room were like, wait, we advocate, we train our community to be a part of these discussions at the city council, right? And to ask these hard questions when you're presenting on permitting issues and green infrastructure implementation. And so it was a kind of a light bulb moment where we're like, this is exactly why this group exists, because I think there was a disconnect between what we were hearing from some of the more regulatory groups in the room versus what some of the nonprofits' role is in this community. And I think they maybe didn't realize that they both have an important role and that they really need to be talking to each other in this space. So I think that's just one example of why these programs and how that addresses and how we're hoping that continues to build new policies and really, holds up the infrastructure of some of these programs.
In TWA, we talk a lot about this sphere of influence and where do you have the power to drive decisions and influence decisions. And so providing rising leaders with the tools to practice communicating to different audiences, whether that's a peer or a supervisor or a community member or elected official, how do we communicate with these different audiences to meet people where they're at? And invite them along to participate in the conversation. So I think that's a big thing of leadership, is just understanding that there's nuance to those discussions and those conversations, and how do we bring others along?
I mean, for the sake of examples, our Combined Sewer Overflow Committee prepares communities who are about to get a permit for combined sewer overflows. They prepare community members to be able to talk about what to say in their public comments based on recommendations from people who are in the field, with people from, that have met and have sort of like long-term understanding of these types of problems. So that's just one of the example, but even through our Emerging Leaders program that was also funded by Spring Point Partners. We have young emerging leaders who are doing phenomenal work, and they just need a little bit more information or to connect the dots, but they're already leaders. And so Jersey Waterworks tries to create a platform where they could practice their public speaking. Right now, we've invited 2 of those young people to participate in one of the sessions for a conference. And we provide a platform where they could participate in different initiatives that each committee is working on. For our water affordability, we have 5 different community partners who are working with our members from other entities. And so I think just the work and the work plan itself, we try to create opportunities for people to meet and sort of build their leadership understanding. But we are not building it. We're just kind of creating a platform because they are already leaders doing really what they do.
And it sounds like a very successful platform that you've built. I've experienced it firsthand. I can say it's very successful. So I want to, continue on that high note of what successes you have all seen. Lauren, I know the most recent cohort of the TWLA graduated just a few weeks ago. So maybe you can start with a success from this year's cohort.
Yeah, definitely was riding on a high for the past couple of weeks of that, seeing everybody come together in Denver for the graduation. But I think the resounding success from my perspective is just how many people shared that this is a place where I feel like I belong. And I think that for me is huge. They belong both in the water sector, in the program. Many came from small utilities. One person said, I didn't see anybody who looked like me in my community, in my place of work. And in the TWLA, I realized that, yeah, I belong here. I belong in the industry. And I think that's a big goal of the program, is retention, for people to stay in the industry and to continue and take on those leadership management roles. And so for me, that was the greatest success I could hear in a program, is that feeling of I will keep going and doing what I'm doing.
Success for Jersey Waterworks, there's a few, but I want to highlight the work that the Lead in Drinking Water Task Force has done in articulating via research and recommendations why it's so important to remove lead from lead service lines, and to create a set of recommendations that then have influenced the law and policy in New Jersey. So that's such a huge success for us, and we're now working with members who are helping each other out through peer-to-peer convenings, making sure that now the implementation of the law is going forward. So that's just one of the successful things that I could share. There's been many others. We've grown, we've helped to sort of elevate and promote green infrastructure with Rutgers and our Rutgers partners. Right now, there's over 900 green infrastructure champions promoting and working in the local towns, including Pat, really pushing green infrastructure. So very proud of the work that the members have done.
Yeah. I think success for us is that we have people who now have decided not to leave the industry, which is great. Our LinkedIn page is growing by leaps and bounds. We are now hosting what we call nightcaps at the national conferences, and those numbers are growing. People are feeling as if I found a home. I found a place where I can be heard. I found a place where I feel valued, and I found a place that's going to find solutions for the issues that I have been encountering.
Yeah. Well, ditto to all that. I think also, I mean, we share some of the same successes, I think, in our program as well. And, one that comes to mind is definitely during this federal transition that we've been in, a lot of folks have either been having to look for new positions or have had to change the way they they work within their existing organization. And our group has been able to give support in a way that I don't think would have been there for some of those leaders who have come through the program. I also think that, several cohort members have built new partnerships with each other outside of the formal collaborative sessions, to apply for grants and to share staff capacity. Again, it's just a way for a new avenue for them to rely on each other and different organizations to complete their work. So
Fantastic. Let's end with one more question I want to hear from each of you. In light of a lot of the challenges we discussed throughout the series, but also that you all brought up today, we also mentioned changing landscapes in DEI, other ways that we have to change our work, but also the many, many challenges that face our water industry now and that are going to be emerging over the coming years and decades. Why does your program or organization matter to the water industry?
I think our program matters to the water industry for a number of reasons. One, to get more diversity into the industry, not just race, not just age and gender, but as a people, as a whole. I think that I have some fears about the industry, especially as far as a number of people are aging out. What does that mean for the industry? Unless we start bringing more younger people in. I worry about the contaminants, what that's going to do to the industry as far as regulation is concerned. What is that going to do as far as funding? How are we going to afford it? So there's a lot that we need to tackle in the next few years that's going to be really hard hitting on the industry.
yeah, I think just echoing what Pat was saying, I think it's important that us on this call, work together too in our own program. And I think we do that a lot through conversations like these, but we also all know each other through different networks that support each other. So that's great. And I think, as Paula had said, collaboration is really difficult. And, I think we have to continue to work at it. So these programs cannot go away. I mean, they bring these groups together to have tough conversations, as we've all talked about. And I think that if that goes away, then how we meet our collective water challenges is just, it makes it even more difficult. So I think we've started something great and we've kept these programs moving forward, and we need to continue that momentum.
Yeah. For me, the TWA matters for retention and equipping leaders to reflect the communities they serve and to be able to support those communities, but also leaders equipped with the skills to handle complex challenges that our future is going to bring. They're not just technical solutions, they're people solutions, they're complicated. And so we need leaders that are able to talk through those challenges and to move forward together.
Jersey Waterworks matters, and because there are many members that see gaps where others don't, and they move together to address those gaps. Most recently, one of our members is asking us to organize around PFAS and emerging contaminants. These organizations and collaborative matter because we need to work together. The water system is so vast, so impactful, so necessary, that if we don't work together, we're not going to be able to face the many challenges that are here now and will be here in the future. We will continue to have to work together.
Thank you, Paula. And with that, we'll end our discussion. Paula, Pat, Brenton, Lauren, thank you so much for coming on today, for sharing your experiences and your expertise with our audience. You can all turn off your cameras and mics. Your job is done. Thank you. Now, before we close out the series, there is one more thing I want to bring up. And that's our goal of this series, which our panelists did a wonderful job articulating. And that's that at its core, we wanted to get across the message that while we face many challenges in the water industry, as our speakers today mentioned, collaboration is key to solving all of them. But collaboration is not possible unless we continue to build all aspects of our industry with the core values of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because diversity is powerful. It brings unique perspectives, new ideas, innovation, and creativity, leading to better problem solving. However, the value in that diversity can't be realized unless we practice inclusion and treat everyone equitably. So I'm going to share my slides one more time because I got one thing I want to show everybody here. Go from our panelists. So when we began planning our speakers for the series, we held this collaborative idea in mind, but we also wanted to be expansive in our definition of diversity. And that's why we're so proud to have collaborated with almost 20 organizations, from nonprofits, municipal utilities, investor-owned utilities, service companies, and more, everything from hyper-local to national organizations, and all from several different sectors of the industry. And from that diverse selection of organizations, we were able to bring on speakers from an immense number of different identity groups, all with unique backgrounds and perspectives, all who share in the same common goal we all share in, to provide clean, safe, affordable water to the communities we serve. Their diversity is the strength of Beyond the Surface, just as the diversity of all water professionals is one of the greatest strengths of our industry. So I want to thank all of these organizations and all of our speakers today and throughout the series. Lastly, I want to thank very sincerely everyone that helped run this program, our AWWA New Jersey staff, Mona Cavalcoli and Liz Whalen, and our planning team, Anna Santino and Lindsay Holt. And finally, thank you to everyone in the audience for joining us and going beyond the surface. Have a great day.